The course of events of today's Manhwa begins on the day when the fleet of the alliance of the 7 strongest nations attacked the base of the Bloody Emperor in the Golden Crow Galaxy, a fleet of awakened ones. However, during the attack on the base of the Bloody Emperor himself was not on the front line, and as a result, the elite detachment of the Empire was destroyed by the Alliance troops. Next, we watch a warrior in cool armor who is clearly defeated by someone. He raises his head to look at his opponent and asks him who the hell he is. After a couple of moments, the opponent of this war notice congratulates on the completion of the epic event called the Bloody Emperor Devouring the Stars. The completion time is 36 minutes. Meanwhile, the guy who apparently easily defeated this powerful warrior decided to answer by asking the loser again who he was. Immediately after this, we see in front of us a guy similar to Kirito from Sword Art Online. He is holding an S-rank sword in his hands, surrounded by system messages with characteristics. Further, this young man still decides to answer the enemy he defeated that he was just passing by, and even if he introduces himself, it will not give him anything. The defeated Bloody Emperor was very surprised by the guy's answer, because judging by his words, the guy who was passing by was able to defeat the powerful Bloody Emperor. In response to this rather pertinent remark, our protagonist silently places his S-rank blade usually in its sheath. Meanwhile, the Emperor continues to say that none of this matters. Kirito from Sword Art Online approaches the Emperor and tells him that at first it was difficult for him to kill him. But after 78 times, he did not even use a tenth of his strength. The Bloody Emperor was just an NPC, so when our main character admitted that he farmed him after many attempts, the Emperor replied that he did not understand what he was talking about. Our main character continues to put moral pressure on his defeated enemy as he approaches. He says that he doesn't like his name Bloody Emperor because it is very old-fashioned. Looking down, the Bloody Emperor does not answer immediately. Later he says that he buried his name as the Bloody Emperor in time. Now it remains in the past. After listening to this line, our main character wondered why this NPC had so much text. He wondered why he didn't just call himself Bloody Gravy. After our protagonist ends his humor break, he summons a healing seal and tells the Emperor that he would be bored just letting him die in peace. That is why our main character directed his healing magic at this defeated Bloody Emperor, immediately after which the Emperor's body was enveloped in this magic. While the system notifies us that the breath of life is unblocked and the object of use is the Bloody Emperor, regeneration is in full swing. The Emperor cannot believe it. The Bloody Emperor is familiar with this healing magic called the Starry Sky Temple's Breath of Life. Meanwhile, the body under this man's huge armor begins to regenerate. The surprised Bloody Emperor notifies our protagonist that he has just used a sacred artifact that can save lives at a critical moment. The guy opposite the Bloody Emperor told him that this artifact was useless for him because his cells were not capable of division, which is why he did not think twice before doing it. But our main character's dealings with this powerful enemy did not end there. He bent down to this Emperor and told him that he still had a question for him. Next, this guy asked the powerful Emperor who owns the army if he wants to take revenge on the stupid idiots from the 7 nations who started this attack. Hearing this proposal, the Bloody One is very surprised because he thought that the guy opposite him belongs to this alliance of 7 nations, and that is why he defeated him. In response to this, the Swordmaster, as if nothing had happened, replies that once before he really was in the alliance of 7 nations, but he was tired of them, and he simply left it. The guy in the black cloak continued, putting his hands at his sides precisely because he was tired of them. Since then he doesn't help them and acts only within the framework of his interests. This strange Swordmaster continued asking if he would rather receive his death instead of revenge, because he thought that he wanted to live with so many things to do. The puzzled Bloody Emperor, who was so easily defeated, asked the guy directly whether he was doing all this in order to make him his obedient puppet. Meanwhile, this guy in a black cloak began to leave. As he left, he replied that he did not deal with puppets. He continued to walk towards the exit from this place. But before he finally left, this guy from Online Swordmasters dramatically turned to the Bloody Emperor and told him that he was only pursuing the goal of creating a new world. Clenching his fist tightly until he shakes, this guy continues asking the Bloody Emperor he defeated if he knows what he has been doing for thousands of years in this world. This guy apparently was starting or had already gone crazy because he shouted that this world was not the same as his real world. He asked the Emperor if he understood it. In response to these nonsense of our protagonist, the Bloody Emperor briefly responded by telling the guy that he was a crazy madman, but the guy was not taken aback and replied that he was just like him. Lost in thought, the Bloody Emperor understood that this psycho even used the breath of life, and if he did not agree, then his death would certainly be long and painful. Having made a brilliant decision with the help of high intelligence, the Bloody Emperor told the psychopath on the contrary that he was right, and in any case, his life no longer belonged to him. After our main character, pursuing an incredible goal, took out his very cool S-rank sword and swung it sharply towards the Bloody Emperor sitting on his knees. But instead of taking the life of this emperor, the guy began to recruit him, saying that he wanted to destroy the world of stars, and the guy would lead him. The emperor swore an oath that he was ready to serve. A couple of moments after this event, a notification appeared in front of us that was different from the previous ones. It congratulated the player on completing the 276th round of closed beta testing. The guy immediately realized that this notification was not the same as the previous ones, because he heard a strange sound that did not look like a mechanical one, like in regular notifications. Then the first system notification was immediately followed by a second one, which, after diagnosing the system, reported that logical errors and database errors had been successfully corrected. Immediately after the second notification, the stream of notifications continued with a third, which notified the player that they were starting to log into the open beta version of the game they were playing. After the guy read the last notice that he was starting to enter the open beta test, he could not believe his eyes, because the closed beta test lasted a very long time. A couple of moments after this, the Bloody Emperor looked up and saw that some kind of blue hole had appeared and began to transform everything around and suck it into itself. Looking at this process, our main character begins to rejoice because he finally waited for this long-awaited event. Because this game was in closed beta for 1,000 years, he thought he was going crazy. Meanwhile, this blue system hole continued to grow exponentially. In just a couple of moments, it became several hundred times larger than it was. Another system notification. This time, the data integrity of the open beta test is being checked, so the notification asks you to wait patiently for a while. But everything does not go as smoothly as it should, because after a couple of moments, a stream of errors begins, and the system detects a critical error and immediately tries to make corrections. After an attempt to correct a critical error, a data failure occurs, because an unstable sector has been detected, so an initialization attempt begins in accordance with the system settings. Everything returns to blue tones again because the initialization is successful. This already quite annoying system once again asks players to patiently wait for the initialization to complete. A couple of moments later, that annoying system pops up the notification again. This time the good news is the system diagnostics are complete and the game is officially open for public use. When some time passes after this, albeit not very smooth but successful launch of the game, we watch our main character slowly open his eyes. After his eyes are opened, the first thing the guy sees is a huge beam of light in front of him that rushes straight into space. Everything around him is as strange as possible, because now he is in space. After a couple of moments, our main character decides not to sit still, but to rise and approach this mysterious stream of energy that flows upward. It is already very close. But as soon as this guy came a little closer, something very unexpected happened. Someone's female foot and a heel appeared from this stream of energy, and a loud step was heard. Next, we watch a cat girl who greets our main character in the cluster of stars. She asks him to introduce himself. This voice was familiar to the guy because it was Miss Guide. The guy was already painfully familiar with all this because he had been a participant in closed beta testing for more than 1,000 years. He briefly answers this girl that his registration name is imaginary. Miss Guide answers our main character that his registration was successful. Then she opens a window in front of him and tells him to select his race to continue registration. In front of our main character is a window with a choice of race. On the left is a representative of the ordinary human race, and on the right is some kind of cyborg who is a representative of the mechanoid race. But before this choice, our main character does not think at all. He immediately reaches for a race that is already familiar to himself and to us, and chooses the human race by pressing the button. The girl warns our protagonist before his choice that she must remind him that mechanoids have a number of advantages and characteristics such as strength, physique, and more. Miss Guide Catgirl continues saying that in addition, they can receive additional bonuses to experience and speed of leveling up the technical skill tree by connecting the knowledge module. But despite the number of advantages that the mechanoid class receives, our main character replies that he is confident in his choice, because he is far from a beginner, because he has been here for 1,000 years. The starting bonuses of mechanoids may be very tempting, but not everyone knows that by choosing this race, players are deprived of the opportunity to obtain a mythical profession. Having chosen the mechanoid class, our main character will not be able to use human objects. As a result, it will be very difficult for him in the last stages. This is the minus of mechanoids. After our main character finally chose the human race, his next choice was to choose the starting conditions, choosing between ordinary and special. Miss Guide once again reminds our main character that under special conditions at the beginning of the game, he will encounter random events and unusual rewards, so he needs to think carefully. In response to another choice from the system, our main character again, without hesitation, chooses a normal start, because random and unusual rewards may seem cool only to noobs. After all, over the 1,000 years our main character spent in closed beta testing, he conducted more than 200 experiments, and in 2 out of 3 cases, he received terrible starting conditions. When choosing special starting conditions at the beginning of the game, our main character repeatedly found himself in absurd and hopeless situations. He was arrested for being a criminal of rank S. Our main character justified his choice by the fact that he simply did not want to take the risk of again sitting in an interstellar prison for minor spectators of skibidi toilets. Immediately after this, the registration procedure for our main character ended, and without waiting for the guide's next comment, our main character simply silently walked into a powerful stream of energy. With his entrance, our main character finally made his choices. Logging into the system began, but once again some kind of system failure occurred and the search for the cause began. The cause of the failure was the detection of an NPC profile. During a successful result, the NPC profile was loaded along with the profile. Our main character was welcomed into the world of stars. A couple of moments after the entry procedure, the course of events is transferred to some very bright apartment where our main character is lying in bed. A rather strange beginning. Meanwhile, our main character barely opens his eyes and wakes up from a dream that is very different from his usual entrance into his favorite fully immersive game. Finally waking up and looking out the window, our main character sees the world of 2077 just like in Cyberpunk. But even cooler, the guy looking at her wonders what kind of place this is. Next, a small medical doctor enters the room. On behalf of a hospital called Valkyrie, he congratulates our main character on his full recovery. Hearing this, our main character is at a loss, because before he always appeared on the territory of the forest supply base of the planet Lanhai of the 7 Nations, and now he is somewhere in the Tian Shan. The guy immediately asks why he ended up here. The robot replies that according to the medical record, he was sent to a special medical ward for treatment after the battle with the Emperor. The guy thinks about it, after all. The Valkyrie Hospital is a network of hospitals created by the Alliance specifically for those wounded during the battle with the Bloody Emperor. But he still had one question. But our main character stops his thoughts and begins to stretch out. He tells the robot to leave him alone because he wants to rest in peace. The robot asks him to let him know if he needs anything. Immediately after the robot completely executed its script to serve the warriors who got here, it turned around and left our main character's room. After our main character opened his profile window, he understood that no one except him was able to see him, but he still had the feeling that the robot was watching. Meanwhile, looking at his profile window, the guy realized that all his characteristics had been reset and he was level 1. Maybe other players also went through the same thing. A couple of moments later, another notification appeared in front of our main character's face, which notified him that the loading of the form had been completed. The guy wanted to take a look. Immediately after this, the guy in the hospital reached out with his finger to open the Reddit window in order to read what interesting happened on the forum. Despite the fact that it was the first day of the official launch of this game, there was already a lot of news on the forum. But our main character was most interested in the most mischievous player. Having visited this page, our main character read that today someone had already received their 99th achievement called Miss NPC, and the attached photo proved this. C. The next news was that without a penny in your pocket, it is difficult to buy anything anywhere. Again, a photograph was attached in which a crowd was beating some guy. Looking at the player's forum, our main character was surprised because even when he was put in isolation and closed beta testing, he didn't do anything like that. The players remained the same. After a couple of moments, our protagonist was attracted by the date that was depicted in the system. The day our protagonist woke up was the 23rd of May, 2046. After reading today's date, our main character became very tense. He simply could not believe his eyes. The system must be playing a joke on him, he thought. The guy's surprise was due to the fact that he clearly remembered that he had entered this game from the very start. That is, on February 22nd, 2046. Something was wrong here. Grabbing his head, the guy realized that while he was tortured during closed beta testing for a whole 1,000 years, in reality only less than 100 days had passed. Realizing this terrible reality, our main character plunged into complete thought in order to find out what the hell happened to him and why everything turned out so strangely. The only thing our main character came up with was to create an article on the forum where he was looking for players who took part in the closed beta testing. He offered a big reward. But while lying in the hospital, instead of the answers that our main character was looking for, he was faced with a huge stream of messages where everyone called him a liar and did not understand what he was writing about. Looking through all this huge number of messages in response to his question, our main character came to the conclusion that no one knows who the awakened ones are except himself. But the awakened ones were a symbol of the second evolution. This is the only key to the awakening and evolution of humanity. That's why the game is called the Cluster of Stars. The earlier you enter, the greater the chance. That is why our main character signed up for closed beta testing, so that he would have an increased chance of becoming one of the awakened ones. But everything did not go according to his plan. The guy realized that everything he did to become one of the awakened ones was meaningless, because in fact they do not exist and no one even knows about them. Looking at his hands and being in a state of shock, our main character asked himself one single question: what he spent a whole 1,000 years on in the closed beta testing of the game. There was such a powerful resonance and refusal to accept reality in the head of our protagonist that he wondered if he had died in the process. With every second of thought, our main character had more and more thoughts, and each thought was deeper than the other. He wondered if he was even real. During his thoughts, our main character even wondered if he was a stupid NPC who was written by a programmer in order to test this game for 1,000 years. Continuing the theory that he is an ordinary NPC written by a programmer, the guy wondered if he could be reincarnated hundreds of times while retaining his memory. Our main character also wondered why he has been here for 1,000 years. Is reality already so deeply imprinted in his mind? But after a couple of moments, our main character decided to forget about these guesses of universal proportions, because the less you know, the more soundly you sleep. So he began to dress in his clothes. After our main character had completely changed his clothes, he stood up and walked to the edge of the chamber to take his S-rank sword, already familiar to us. Leaving this chamber already completely ready to become stronger, the guy decided that when he achieved perfection, he would be able to personally find answers to all questions. The current actions took place in Qingfeng, which was the only large city in the north of the Tianwu Empire. We have already observed the views of this city from the hospital window. After our main character left the walls of the Valkyrie Hospital, he began to head somewhere, merging with the stream of passers-by. Stopping abruptly, the guy realized that he needed to get into the prestigious Six Dark Dragons Intelligence Department. He had no choice but to take quests for beginners and level up. That is why our main character decided to start leveling up. His 1,000 years of experience will be very useful. No matter what he encounters, he will have an advantage. Continuing to head to the department, the entrance to which was guarded by armed guards, our main character was no longer waiting to start his pumping. A couple of moments after our main character safely enters the reception area in this department, he sees in front of him a huge line of players waiting for the quest. But instead of waiting with these losers, our main character headed to a place that was guarded by armed guards. Along the way, he accidentally ran into someone. One of the players who encountered our main character warned him that he was not allowed to go to the place he was heading to right now, in response to which he only smiled. But despite the ban, our main character was allowed in. The players were shocked because to go upstairs you need at least 2,000 reputation points, and to enter here at least 1,000. Continuing to climb the stairs, our main character understood that the NPC guards had a rather simple logic, not to let players through without conditions, but he had something that others did not have. Unlike other players, our main character had an NPC profile with which he moved forward through the security. Then he handed the guard a note and asked him to give it to the director. Despite the fact that our main character had already been stopped, a note was taken from his hands, and he himself told the guard that his director, in his opinion, would want to meet with him. With the help of this strange note, our main character still managed to get inside. Then we watched as the imaginary stood opposite the director's door, patiently waiting for something. Immediately after this guard, as imaginary said, "Pass this note to his director." A couple of moments later, the guard came out and said that his director had approved entry. After that, our main character, without hesitation, immediately went into the director's office. As soon as he entered, the door behind him immediately closed automatically, making a characteristic click. Thus, together with our main character, we ended up in the office of the director himself. At this time, the director had his back turned to our main character and observed the beauties of the city. Continuing not to turn to our main character, creating some kind of mysterious situation in the office, the director asked our main character who he was. But instead of answering this director, our main character turned on the scan in order to obtain information about the person opposite as quickly and efficiently as possible. During the scan, it turned out that before us is the director of 6 dark dragons named Kong Ming. She is level 68, health 54,000, attack 12,000, defense 28,000, rank A+. Turning to our main character, the director, who turned out to be a beautiful waifu, briefly asked our main character. I'll get straight to the point of how he knows. Despite a very direct question to our main character, he immediately responded by asking whether it was so important. Answering rudely, the system notified the guy that the relationship with the NPC had decreased. The imaginary continued saying that the only important thing is that he can help her find the remains of her comrades, having expressed his proposal. The guy continued the conversation with the headmistress. He continued saying that because of the agreement between the Dark Dragons and Tianwu, she would not be able to set foot on the Tianwu Mountains without a reason. This guy continued to speak in the language of facts. But this girl sitting opposite our main character had only thoughts about the fact that right now there was a real scoundrel sitting in front of her who wanted to benefit. But our main character, despite the not very smooth start of the conversation with a rather important big shot, continued the conversation in the language of facts, getting up from his chair and heading towards her. Having approached this girl as much as possible, our main character continued saying that lately there have been so many problems from the imperial ministers. He asked if she wanted to finish with them. The guy continued saying that Falcon, Bandit, Lev, and the rest, he could find and bring them. The girl was shocked and asked who this guy was because he named the call signs of her comrades. As soon as our main character skillfully touched upon a topic that was close to this girl, Kong Ming's relationship with him immediately increased by as much as 45 points. Continuing to masterfully conduct the conversation, the guy went to the window and asked the girl not to worry because he would definitely be able to return the remains to her. Then the guy continued saying that it concerns him. Our main character, mysteriously looking out the window and looking at the buildings, said that in return he would just like to know who he is, and more information about himself. Hearing this very strange remark, the girl was puzzled, because if her hearing did not let her down, she heard that the guy next to her did not even know who he was. But instead of continuing to treat him badly, the director cleared her throat and turned back and told our main character that he managed to convince her and she would believe him. In response to this remark from this waifu, our main character only turned to her. Turning away from the window and smiling broadly, thanked her for believing him. The director immediately outlined the conditions, saying that he had nothing to do with them, which means that she would not give him non-subordinates or money for his work. The guy responded to this by saying that he himself knows this, but he has his own scores to settle with the scum from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Next time, he will help her deal with them. Hearing that the imaginary was going to deal with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in all seriousness, the waifu immediately jumped up from her chair and grabbed the guy by the shirt and told him to come to his senses. In response to this truly strange gesture, our main character only asked if she was worried about him. This question really confused the waifu, and she blushed and replied that she was not worried. After this rather funny scene, our main character headed to the exit from the director's office. He told the girl that he would no longer tease her. He asked her not to forget to send a ship for him. Looking romantically at this waifu and using all the power of his idol appearance, our main character told this girl that she was still the same small but proud moon. These words made the girl very angry. She started screaming, asking the guy how he knew all this, but it was all in vain because the door had already slammed shut after our main character. After the imaginary left the headmistress's office, she began to think about who the hell he was and where and how he could find out the call signs of her comrades and her. Meanwhile, we, together with our main character, move back to the reception of this cool building. A huge crowd of players continues to queue to receive the quest. Moving to our main character, we see him squatting and reading that King Ming's relationship with him has increased by 55 points out of 100, and when they reach 100 points, they will become friends. In addition to increasing relationship points with this waifu, our main character had a hidden quest called Teammates, during which he had to complete an order for this girl. In exchange for completion, our main character was offered 30,000 experience points, 100,000 alliance coins, a set of starshine, and an item of his choice. The guy accepted this quest without hesitation. But our main character, immediately after he accepted the quest, was interrupted by someone's voice from the side who called him brother. The guy raised his head in puzzlement to find out who called him. Raising his head, our main character saw an obvious reference to JoJo performed by 3 players. A very awkward and rather long silence hung between the 4 of them. After the imaginary saw that there was some kind of crowd standing above him, from which a not very friendly aura was emanating, he began to slowly lift him from the floor in order to figure out what was going on. As soon as our main character stood up, the aura of power began to leave him. So these three immediately began to explain themselves to him so that he would not misunderstand them. They wanted to invite him to the guild. After the imaginary realized that this trio did not threaten him in any way, but on the contrary, they were inviting him to the guild, he stopped in order to launch the thought processes regarding the invitation. These three guys immediately began to advertise their guild, saying that their Cold Moon Guild is known throughout Qingfeng, and now they have access to hidden rank D and C quests. After our main character heard all the benefits that this guild was ready to provide him, he folded his hands in front of him and asked them why they were so attracted to him. The guy with long hair and openly said that if he tells them how he was able to climb to the second floor, his combat power and devotion will be great and he will be promoted in rank. The long-haired man continued saying that their guild receives monthly financial subsidies. Having heard all the benefits and why they were so attracted to him, the guy asked if he was serious. The long-haired man, continuing to make a face just like in the anime JoJo, continued to say that he had been achieving this for 3 years, and they would give it to him immediately if he shared the secret. But this is very cool. But after Imaginary listened to all the possible benefits that he would receive if he joined their guild, he said that all this was boring. The guy's answer really surprised the trio. Our main character was not going to waste his precious time. He left these JoJo fanatics saying that their guild did not interest him, and it was time for him to leave on business. But this group of eccentrics was not ready to just let our main character go. Calling him brother and extending their hand after him, they asked him to think again about their invitation. Despite the fact that this group of players made such generous conditions in their opinion to our main character, he still acted like a real Sigma loner and simply left, leaving them. This group of people understood that they could not miss our main character, which is why they began the pursuit, because if they miss him, the long-haired one will tell everything to the deputy of the guild. Meanwhile, the course of events is interrupted, and we are transported to the plains north of the city of Qingfeng, where we were recently, on this plain, the farming of local mobs is very active. Next, we watch the guild master of the Cold Moon and the deputy in this guild. These two girls continue the search for our main character. They order their subordinates not to lose sight of the guy. The girl in round glasses from this guild was extremely upset that they worked so hard to be able to increase their reputation by 150 points, and this guy had already raised his to 2,000. The second girl, deep in thought, understood that either this guy took a hidden task of the same level, or he knows some loopholes that allowed him to earn so many reputation points. Waifu, dressed as a cat girl, was as serious as possible, standing in this clearing, and said that our main character was simply needed by their guild to accelerate the development of their guild. The cat girl clenched her fist tightly, telling the guild deputy that they needed to recruit the imaginary no matter what the cost. The waifu in cute round glasses briefly agreed with this girl. At this moment, the course of events is interrupted, and we are again transported to our main character, who is standing at the merchant. He is asked what else he wants. The guy answers master keys, but this is not enough. After a couple of moments, our main character comes up with what he needs and points to the invisibility potion. He tells the merchant that he needs to purchase this invisibility potion. Looking at this potion, we are shown information that this is a magical consumable that, after taking it, allows the owner to become invisible for 5 minutes. It costs 1,000 coins. A couple of moments later, we watch as our main character, who has thousands of years of experience in this game, buying an invisibility potion, leaves the adventurer's store with a satisfied face. But our protagonist's good mood is interrupted when the system notifies him that the Cold Moon Flower Spirit has just used its tracking ability on him. After the imaginary one read the notice and realized that someone was watching him right now, he was very surprised and decided to stop in place to immediately figure it out. Stopping in the middle of the street of a large city, our main character looked up and shouted loudly that he was being followed right now. He did not see the dark silhouette on the top of the building behind him. While our main character continued to shake his head from side to side in order to see the player who was following him right now, he was already under the gun of the person following him. A couple of moments after this, we see how the same member of the guild to which our main character was invited jumps from a tall building and heads straight to the imaginary. But despite the extremely sudden attack, while the imaginary did not know the direction from which he would be attacked, he immediately gets into his fighting stance in order to meet the attack. But instead of repelling the attacker's attack, he sees that the player who is following him, instead of getting at him in the open, taking advantage of him, did something extremely strange. Looking down, our main character saw the same cat, a girl from the Cold Moon clan, who asked our main character, calling him a respected sir, if she could do anything for him. After this incident, our main character's surprise knew no bounds. In complete confusion, he asked this girl who the hell she was and what she was doing. Meanwhile, the initial goal of this girl was to scan our main character, but only his nickname was known about him, and a note that the degree of his danger was at the level of a natural disaster. After the girl finished her albeit ridiculous scanning, she realized that her subordinates were idiots because they could not distinguish the NPC from the players, and given his degree of danger, they could anger him. A couple of moments later, a notification appeared in front of this girl's face stating that our main character's favor towards her had decreased by 5 points. A decrease leads to a deterioration in relations. The girl understood that after this incident, immediately after she was done with our main character, she would definitely kick this idiot out of the guild for making such a big mistake. Despite the anchor that slows down the movement of our protagonist in the form of a cat girl from the Cold Moons Guild, he continues to confidently move forward in his business. Suddenly, a notification appears in front of the imaginary one, asking him if he wants to give a task to a player near him. He completely forgot that now he is an NPC, and he can give tasks to players. After the guy likes this idea of issuing a quest to this girl just like in Fortnite, a notification appears in front of him that shows him all the conditions for issuing quests to players from him. Due to the fact that the imaginary had enormous experience in this game, he immediately quickly began to set up a quest that he would give to this annoying girl who clung to his leg. A couple of moments after the guy finished setting up this quest, a notification appeared in front of the waifu with white hair and ears. She was very surprised and studied it carefully. The notification said that the imaginary one was inviting her to complete a task. The type of task was trade. She needed to purchase a set of irradiated magnetic bombs in 1 hour. The reward was 4,000 experience. After the girl saw the reward, she could not believe her eyes because they had to gather as a whole guild in order to complete the task with a reward of only 3,000 experience. In this case, our main character just gives D-level tasks with a reward of 4,000 points. The waifu decided that despite his status as a danger of a natural disaster, the experience is worth it. Immediately after this girl accepted the task that our main character sent her, she confidently rose from the floor, and a notification about accepting the quest appeared above her head. Meanwhile, the imaginary one, who had recently discovered that he knew how to give out a quest, told the girl that she had only 1 hour to complete the quest that he gave out. In response to this, the girl turned around and immediately left in order to complete this easiest task, for which she would receive as much as 4,000 experience. She briefly replied that she understood everything. After a couple of moments, this girl leaves our main character and enters a Discord with members of her guild. One of the participants reports that he found an item for the quest. She tells him to buy it immediately. The girl added that the price does not matter, but a guy with long hair we knew earlier answered that for this quest item, at least as much as 600,000 currency coins. Hearing such a huge amount, this girl clearly began to doubt. Repeating this huge amount to herself, this is a robbery after all. From the very beginning, the player has 5,000 coins, but their guild is powerful. Meanwhile, our main character was walking around the city, and after he realized that he could give out quests, he relaxed and walked contentedly, because now he had nowhere to rush. Suddenly, the imaginary was called from behind. He turned back and saw the girl to whom he had given the quest. Running up to him, she said that she had already done everything, and she took out the key item of the quest. Immediately after this girl announced that she had brought the necessary thing, she sent the guy an exchange on Steam in order to transfer the magnetic bomb that he demanded during the quest. The description of this bomb said that it was a C+ level item. The damage type was ultra-high temperature, radiation, shockwave. The effect had a high probability of causing blindness, stun, and other debuffs. After our main character was convinced that the player completed the task correctly, he accepted the exchange and told her that she did the job perfectly. Now he can easily complete the hidden task. Immediately after the imaginary praised this girl, a notification appeared in front of her eyes that notified her that the favor of our main character had increased by 15 points. After this notification, the girl was filled with confidence, and it was for this reason that she stood in a romantic pose and told Imaginary, calling him brother, that she liked him. But she did not suspect that this was a critical mistake, because immediately after this, the guy's favor towards her dropped by 5 points. The current relationship between them was 5 points. After that, our main character began to leave after he received the magnetic bombs, but the girl asked him to stop, asking him if he had any more quests because she would complete everything. In response to this, our main character turned back, and with a smile on his face asked the girl if she was really ready to complete quests with absolutely any tasks. But this didn't scare the girl at all. She continued saying that she would really do everything in her power. Hearing this, our main character began to think about what he could entrust. Despite the fact that the girl in front of him was of the 6th level, she never admitted defeat. And the imaginary, looking at this assertive girl, understood that she was now unlikely to get rid of him. After a couple of moments of thought, our main character replied that he would not be in Qingfeng for a couple of days, and if fate brought them together again, he would tell her how to contact him for new assignments. Hearing this, the girl's mood immediately rose because she, one might say, managed to get another quest with a huge reward. She thoughtlessly said yes to every proposal from the guy. The imaginary, making a face like an anime psycho, understood that, thanks to the limitations of the system, he could not be afraid that the player would harm him, and the girl was going to keep this NPC a secret. After our main character left, a notification about the guild forum appeared in front of the girl saying that within 30 minutes, everyone representing the Tianwu Empire would gather in the city. Meanwhile, the course of events is interrupted, and we move into nature, or more precisely into the Tianwu Mountains, the average height of which is 5,300 meters, where all monsters up to the rank of Lord, up to level 50, live. Next, we observe our main character. Thanks to the odor neutralizer that he prepared, he was able to complete this game without engaging in battles. Ordinary players in such conditions would have lost their comrades long ago. After thousands of years of beta testing, this guy was ready for anything. Chanmo learned to imitate the skills of various professions by relying on his wealth of experience and control of his body. Meanwhile, our main character continued to cover the distance at great speed, just like Naruto Uzumaki. After a couple of moments, the forests ended. Having reached this strange stone location, our main character realized that he was now in place, and this, in turn, was the shortest path to the goal. He continued his movement. But after the guy landed on a rocky hill, he didn't think at all that below there would be just a huge number of huge snakes that were ready to devour him. These snakes were Yamahara pythons of level 25 of regular rank. Their only skills were to strike with their tail. This is an ordinary giant python that lives in the Tianwu Mountains, famous for its high mobility and strength of its tail. But our main character had a way out even in this seemingly hopeless situation. He took something like a cat's hook from his inventory and began to twist it tightly. After the guy had sufficiently spun his grappling hook, he immediately threw it at the nearest hill he saw. The hook easily penetrated the stone and caught. Immediately after this, our main character instantly took off from the ground and began to be attracted to a hill into which he threw his device, which helped him out of this situation. But even with the help of this seemingly life-saving device, the imaginary clearly still had some difficulties in getting out of this place infested with snakes. He continued to fly over them. After some time, our main character still managed to reach a land that was safe, unlike the place where he had been just recently. This time he came to plains on which surprisingly large trees grew that immediately caught his eye. Under the giant trees there were some animals that were resting. Looking at one of them, we understand that this is a one-horned bull of level 35 elite rank. It has the skill of ramming. One-horned bulls are herd monsters living in the Tianwu Mountains. After the guy saw this crowd that was attacking any potential threat, he said that even with level 40 it wouldn't be easy with them. Why risk it if you can just... Without finishing the sentence, our main character reached into his pocket to take out the very potion that he bought in the adventurer's store when he was still within the city. After the guy supported this potion, he began to pour this potion into himself in one gulp in order to become completely invisible for the next 10 minutes in order to avoid the threat. After a couple of moments, the guy completely finished this purple liquid and he really became invisible. But the taste of this liquid was damn disgusting, not like the elixir from Clash Royale. But the activity of our main character did not end there. Immediately after the invisibility potion, he drank a potion of agility which, after consumption, increased agility by 15% for 10 seconds. After that, the dexterity of our main character increased by 15%. He rushed at full speed in order to calmly pass this herd, consisting of one-horned bulls. He needed to drown to the maximum. At this moment, our main character could really look like the Flash because he ran through this huge herd in just an amazing time, and with amazing speed. Usain Bolt would be jealous. But after a couple of moments, one-horned bull was still confused by something, and he immediately looked towards our main character in order to understand whether there was a threat to them. After one of the individuals saw our main character, she immediately informed the others that a potential threat had appeared in their ranks, and they went into attack mode. Looking back, our main character immediately realized that the effect of the invisibility potion he had just taken had stopped working, and he had obvious problems. After all, looking back together with our main character, we saw a huge crowd of one-horned bulls which, being very angry, rushed towards our main character at full speed. But judging by the reaction of our main character, who spent 1,000 years in this place, he had a plan for this situation in order to get away with it. Immediately after this, the imaginary pointed his hand in some direction unknown to us and used a grappling hook like Batman's to save his skin from the crowd. A couple of moments after our main character used his harpoon, we saw that the target of his sight was the same huge tree with the help of which he climbed to a safe place. Judging by the reaction of one of the one-horned bull, he was simply furious that this Sigma guy had fooled them like one-year-old children and escaped punishment for his appearance without engaging in battle. After a couple of moments, the course of events is interrupted and continues when the guy comes to the sandy area, because according to satellite data, this is the same cliff from which Kong Ming's comrades fell. After our main character was convinced that he had come to the right place, he continued to walk along the cliff in order to find the remains of Kong Ming's comrades that he had promised. After a couple of tens of meters walked along, our main character stopped because he saw something interesting with his peripheral vision. He needed to make sure that it was not his imagination. Turning completely to the side, our main character saw in front of him 3 skeletons that could well have been the remains that were his goal of the task. They were all armed. But after the imaginary, using critical thinking, realized that their equipment did not look like the standard equipment of the 6 dark dragons, he realized that these were not the same remains. But despite the fact that these remains did not belong to those whom he was looking for, according to the analysis, the imaginary again noticed something important that attracted his attention as quickly as possible. Immediately after this, our main character sat down on one knee to one of the 3 skeletons in order to pick up from the ground some strange, very old book that was lying nearby. This book was the Diary of a Dead Man, which talked about a mission of advanced complexity. 3 dead men discovered an unusual tomb and then were killed in a mysterious way. You need to find out the reason. But the condition for completing this advanced quest was to be level 30 or higher, which is why our main character was unable to complete this quest, at least for now. Continuing to look at this book, the guy understood that since this chain of tasks, he would not be able to open this book until the previous checkpoints were passed, but he did not have time. It is for this reason that our main character simply decided to bury the remains of these 3 dead so that they could rest in peace, after which the guy turned around and continued his search. Approaching an unusually beautiful waterfall, our main character stopped because, as far as he remembers, the place where this girl's comrades died was somewhere around this. Continuing to walk further and further, our main character accidentally stepped on a rusty sword that was under his foot. This forced him to stop because the owner must have been somewhere nearby. After our main character picked up this long sword from the ground and examined it, he realized that this sword was similar to the sword that the soldiers from the Tianwu Empire carried. A couple of moments after our main character fell on the right trail, after searching for the remains a little more, he looked into the river in which he saw a skeleton in some unusual form. Continuing to look around, our main character saw another skeleton that was in the same shape as the first, but this time it was not in the water, but on land near the bushes. The guy didn't need to walk long to see, after a few steps, another skeleton in the same uniform as the previous 2, which was located near a small stone. After our main character successfully found the remains of the 3 people he apparently needed, he continued his search in this area because he needed to find another skeleton. Continuing to look for the mysteriously missing 4th skeleton, the girl began to admit that he might have messed something up, because after all, 1,000 years have passed since this event. But as soon as our main character fixed his gaze on this strange hole from which a dark aura was coming, all doubts were dispelled. It is certain that he should be there. Looking at this most suspicious place from which a huge amount of evil aura emanates, our main character immediately realized that getting the 4th skeleton would not be easy. After our main character decided that the last skeleton was definitely in this dungeon, he immediately rushed inside in order to complete his hidden quest to the end. As soon as Chen Mo entered this dungeon, he found himself in a real labyrinth. Because there were many forks there, so there may not be enough potions, he needs to find the remains before he meets the monster. After our main character already had a strategy in his head, he continued to solve the maze at breakneck speed. But when he entered one of the forks, he realized that he had found what he was looking for. But everything was not so simple, because after Chen Mo stopped in front of the last corpse he needed, looking up he saw a huge spider above him, which apparently was dozing. After scanning this huge, dangerous spider, we understand that it is a rank 35 devil spider. It has full health and has a mid-level premonition talent. It can sense a threat. Immediately after the guy saw this huge sleeping player in front of him, he took up his sword. If he were an ordinary player, he could be revived, but now he has no opportunity to take risks. Thinking through all the possible battle options in his head, the guy realized that the gap in strength was too great, and all his attack options would fail miserably, and he would undoubtedly lose in this battle. But after a couple of moments, our main character once again came up with a brilliant idea on how he could get out of this seemingly hopeless situation again. After a couple of moments, we watch as our main character simultaneously infuses himself with 2 potions at once, an invisibility potion and an agility potion in order to get more effect. Immediately after our main character received the effect of invisibility and increased agility by 15%, he rushed to that very remains in order to quickly complete his quest. But as soon as our main character moved, this huge devilish spider awakened thanks to the ability that allows him to sense danger and hissed at the guy. Immediately after this huge devil cat jumped out from his sleeping place and stood in front of our main character. Chenmo was forced to stop because his plan had failed. But after a couple of moments, our main character realized that his plan was doomed to failure, and he was unable to quickly get past this huge spider in order not to get involved in the battle. Immediately after this, our main character tried to escape from this battlefield, but the devilish spider was 1 step ahead of our main character, which is why he blocked his escape route. But apparently our main character once again had a plan to avoid another trouble, because he bounced off the hard surface under his feet with all his might. Immediately after this, our main character easily made a tackle just like in Call of Duty in order to jump straight through this huge devilish spider. Despite the fact that the Imaginary's goal was simply to escape from this situation, while he was under this huge spider with abs, he managed to place something on the lower part of the spider. After our main character's maneuver was successful, he stood in front of this devilish huge spider who was very angry because the guy had fooled him around his finger. Immediately after this spider was about to abruptly end the life of our main character with a sudden, very fast attack, but our main character was able to easily dodge at the last moment. After the guy took a comfortable distance from this spider, the guy was going to provoke this spider so that it would continue to mindlessly attack him. Chenmo managed to provoke this not very smart old man, which is why after a couple of moments this spider flew into the guy again, but he again easily dodged the attack. The battle, if you can call it Chiaki, continued. Our main character continued to dodge numerous quick strikes of the spider over and over again without receiving a single unit of damage. After several dodges by our main character, he still managed to find a way out of this cave. When he saw it, he immediately quickly ran towards the light that he saw at the end of the tunnel. But before running outside, our main character began to take something out of his inventory. Something began to appear in his hand. After the thing called by our main character from his inventory appeared, he threw the bomb that appeared in his hand at the spider. It looked like the planet Saturn. The enemy of our main character in the form of a giant spider did not expect such a turn of events, which is why he was unable to dodge this bomb. And when it was nearby, he stood like a pillar. Literally a second later, there was a huge explosion from this bomb. The explosion was so powerful that a huge curtain of smoke from this explosion came out through this small tunnel. Even Chenmo found it difficult to resist the shockwave of this huge explosion, which is why he stuck his sword into the ground so that he would not be blown away by the shockwave. But after the explosion ended, the guy looked at the place of the explosion and understood that the magnetic bomb was incredibly strong. But even it couldn't cope with this devilish huge spider. Even though this magnetic bomb was not able to kill this huge spider, it gave him 2 weakening in the form of dizziness and blindness, which allowed our main character to go inside. Immediately after this, our main character followed to that very missing corpse in order to pick it up and finally complete his quest to collect the remains of the girl's comrades. After this, the course of events moves and we are again in the huge city of Qingfeng. We are watching an imaginary who is confidently heading somewhere. Most likely he is going to take a quest. But suddenly we notice that our main character, who was just walking somewhere, is being followed by some suspicious 2 guys who, hiding, continue to watch him. Our main character, with the help of his spider sense, understands that someone is following him, but as soon as he turns back to get the person watching, these 2 immediately leave. A couple of moments later, these 2 open a Discord to inform their boss that our main character has just returned back to the city. They are very joyful during this. The cat girl from the guild, already familiar to us, orders them to keep an eye on the imaginary and in no case provoke him, because his threat level reaches a natural disaster. The girl continues her explanation by telling these 2 guys that if our main character notices them and starts getting angry, they should quickly apologize and leave. After these 2 receive the clearest possible order, despite its extreme clarity, they begin to look at each other. Apparently the order was complicated. The course of events is interrupted, and after a couple of moments we observe a sign on the door on which the director is written. Meanwhile, we move to the director's office. The surprised girl with her hair tied up who sent our main character on a quest, seeing him, looks at him in surprise and asks him if he found the remains of her comrades. In response to this, our main character, calling the girl Little Moon, reminds her that she entrusted him with this task, so she should not be surprised because he always completes quests. Hearing this answer from our protagonist, which was spoken in the language of facts, she looks away because she really has nothing to add to this logical remark. After a couple of moments, the girl sees how our main character has already placed the remains of 4 of her comrades on the table. She runs up to them and realizes that it is really a falcon, a bandit, and a lion. Continuing to look at the remains of her comrades, which no one could find for a long time, this girl, turning to our main character, thanks him for the help he provided. But our main character has little to answer to this. Instead, he gets up from the couch and looks down at the girl and is about to start moving towards her, sighing. After a couple of moments, we watch as our main character, having connected to this girl, squats down and, putting his hand on her shoulder, tells her that he is sorry for her loss. After our main character says this phrase, the girl looks at him, and the notification notifies us that Kong Ming's favor towards the guy has increased by 10 points. Immediately after this, a second notification appears, but this time it is a System 1, which congratulates the imaginary player on completing a hidden task called Teammates. The rewards have been sent to the inventory. After the guy reads the last part of this notification, he smiles because he is glad that the time has finally come for him to receive the reward for the quest. Immediately after Chen Mo received the notification that the quest rewards were in his inventory, he stood up and began to walk away from this girl's office, leaving her alone with the remains of her comrades. Next, we watch as the guy moved away and pressed him against some wall in order to open his inventory there. Judging by the expression on his face, he really liked the contents of his inventory. But literally a second later, we realize that 4 new items have appeared in our main character's inventory, and judging by his stunning reaction, these items are very cool and useful. Our main character's attention was caught by some strange but quite beautiful clothes. Looking at them, he cannot believe that right now he has the radiance of stars in his inventory. Taking a closer look at that clothing, we understand that it is of legendary rank and the level is not limited. The damage inflicted on the owner of the mantle below 16 is reduced by 10 times. According to legend, the life of anyone who wears it will shine. Continuing to read these characteristics, the guy understands that this reduction in damage will make him practically invulnerable. And with such an attack, he can easily deal with anyone. This is an indispensable thing for this game. For a whole 1,000 years of beta testing, our main character was never lucky enough to see this equipment. He assumed that this was some kind of innovation in this version of the game.
But the guy decided not to dwell on this award. Instead, he decided to get acquainted with the rest of the awards, calling them around him. His head began to spin around.
A couple of moments later, a notification appeared in front of our main character's face asking him to select an item. The guy sighed and said that he knew that there was some kind of catch. The first step in the profession of a martial artist is to strengthen the body and increase physical strength in order to break through the shackles of genetics and go to the origins of strength. According to rumors, in the end you can unite your body with your spirit. This is the gateway to the incredible world of magic. Those who come here will be able to use various elements such as earth, fire, water, and wind, and they can also study the laws of space and their own strength. Looking at the drawing for mechanoids, the guy understood that the mechanical heart is a power plant that replaces the heart until it makes the owner a practically immortal Giga child. Looking at this drawing, the guy understood that in front of him was undoubtedly a legendary item that was one of the best to start with. But there was one nuance that changed everything. That is why the guy skips these drawings. The next reward is a scroll of magician knowledge, with the help of which you can become a magician at any time, but you need to pay a certain price for it. The guy understands that if he becomes a magician with this scroll, his defense and health will become almost 0, so he begins to nod his head from side to side because this option is not for him. The next reward to choose from is an unknown potion. During beta testing, someone with a hidden profession was able to kill the final boss in 5 moves. This is a terribly strong profession. Continuing to watch this potion, the guy understood that with every sip he would absorb various secrets that would be able to drive him crazy. But the profession was able to bring that player closer to the level of a god. After a couple of moments, the guy chooses this particular potion, which can drive you crazy with its secrets. He decides that this is not a problem for him, and this thing will not affect him. Next, an unknown potion appears in our protagonist's inventory. He asks the moon in front of him if there is a place where he can stay alone and no one will disturb him. But the little moon doesn't answer our main character right away. because just recently she was grieving for her comrades who fell a long time ago. But she begins to rub her eyes to answer the guy. Getting up and leaving the remains of her comrades, this girl, heading towards the exit from her office, tells our main character to follow her until she leads him to the place. Chenmo thanked the little moon and asked him to make sure that no one disturbs him while he is in this place where no one can disturb him. After our main character entered this room, immediately after that the door closed in front of him, making a characteristic silk sound. The guy was ready to start using the potion. Immediately after the guy went inside, he headed to the soft bed and placed his sword on it and sat down on it and summoned that same unknown potion from his inventory. Our main character did not intend to languish, which is why we watch as the guy, after a few seconds, brings this potion to his mouth and begins to drink it greedily in order to get secrets. After a couple of seconds, our main character empties this bottle of potion. He wipes his mouth and, looking at the bottle, wonders what's in it because it's quite tasty. Stretching upward after drinking the potion, our main character assumes that all these stories about this unknown potion are probably just stories, because he did not feel any effect after using it. But after a couple of moments, our main character feels a state of shock as sharply as possible. Despite the fact that a moment ago everything was as usual, he immediately understands that something is wrong. Grabbing his body, the guy bends down and wonders what the hell is happening. He experiences some kind of sharp pain and everything around him begins to surround himself with a dark demon and an evil aura. A few seconds pass and our main character begins to be transported to some kind of system space. The guy does not understand what is happening and is trying to somehow adapt to what is happening. A couple of moments after the guy tries to adapt, as soon as he gets used to it a little, he begins to fall sharply somewhere. Everything around him turns red instead of the usual blue color. The guy's fall is accompanied by a simply terrible feeling of heat. It's so hot here that our main character bares his teeth and grabs his clothes because right now he's terribly hot. But the mysterious and unexpected fall of our main character continues, and he crosses the hot zone and ends up in the icy zone. His condition at this moment is very deplorable, and he does not understand. Finding himself in the icy space, after a couple of moments the guy becomes terribly cold. Despite the fact that a moment ago he was mortally hot, he grabs his knees and continues to fall. Meanwhile, the guy is congratulated by the system on moving to the secret beginner's stage. A new skill line has opened for him, and his attributes of agility and spirit strength have increased by 100, and he will receive 25 bonus points. After a couple of moments, we see how our main character still falls down, and, lying in the water, another notification appears in front of him, which says that his container of mana is now a container of spiritual energy. Finding himself in this most strange place, the imaginary opens his eyes as quickly as possible and realizes that now he has moved back to his soft bed and he is not falling anywhere. Despite this, the guy jumps up from his soft bed and begins to breathe heavily. Cold sweat also begins to pour from his face from what he recently experienced after drinking an unknown potion. After a couple of moments, our main character brings his hands to himself, and looking at them, the guy is happy because he has accomplished something. Despite the strange feeling, he heads for the exit. Having reached the door that leads him straight to the director's room, the guy sees how the girl has already called people to take the remains of her friends to another place. Hearing that the door behind the small moon opened, she turns and, looking at our main character, asks if he finished his business in a place where no one disturbed him. But without waiting for an answer, this girl continues asking the guy if everything is okay with him. Because after he left this room, he seemed to become a completely different person, and it was difficult to recognize him. But despite the concern of the little moon, which was addressed to the imaginary one, our main character simply looked at her as if she were a victim, and only briefly asked if she really thought so. But without waiting for an answer, our main character passes by the small moon, heading towards the exit from the director's office, and informs this girl who was left behind that he has left. Without having time to say anything, the girl looks after him, but before leaving, the guy tells the moon that if she has any questions, she should not be shy and turn to him right away. In response to this proposal of our main character, this girl becomes very embarrassed and looks down somewhere, and two of this girl's employees stop in surprise and look at her. Coming out of this building, our main character understands that it's time for him to pick up a weapon. Although the open beta testing has acquired new storylines, much remains the same as before. The guy understands that north of the city in which he finds there is one remarkable place where he can get the weapon that he needs that suits his rank. But there is one problem. Before we have time to finish speaking, our main character is impudently interrupted by someone who calls him boss and runs very quickly towards him. The guy is very surprised and does not understand who it is. A couple of moments later, we see a girl we already know. The notification asks our main character if he wants to give a task to the spirit of the cold moon flower. The guy realized why he didn't see those two guys. Looking at this girl, the villain guy smiles and wonders whether he has any restrictions on the tasks that he can give to absolutely any players or not. After a couple of moments, a quest appears in front of the girl, the essence of which is that she needs to buy him 1 apple in 30 minutes and bring it. The reward for completing it will be 1 coin. A girl obsessed with emotions from the fact that she saw our main character and the quest from him immediately, without hesitation, without reading it, accepts it with lightning speed to complete. But after this girl accepts the quest given by our main character, most likely she realizes to read the conditions for completing the quest, and she has a lot of questions. Seeing that the reward for completing this quest will be 1 damn coin, this girl begins to get terribly angry, because even the apple that she needs to get will cost more than this reward. But despite the terrible reward for completing the quest, this girl still goes to do it. She hopes that there is some hidden meaning in it, and this is just a one-time task. Meanwhile, our main character, looking after this girl, smiles evilly and says to himself that the suffering of his little friend is just beginning, because he still has many quests. The course of events is interrupted, and we are transported half an hour forward. The girl comes and hands the apple to our main character. The system window will open in front of her, and she is looking forward to the outcome. The notice says that our main character once again wants to give a task to this girl. She is very happy because she believes that she was right, and now she will receive the task normally. But literally a couple of moments after the girl once again reads the description of the quest that our main character gave her, her face speaks for itself, and the quest is strange again. This time, the quest is for the girl to learn to obey. To complete this quest, she is given 5 minutes. She needs to take off one of her socks and stand like that for 1 minute. The reward is again 1 coin. Realizing that the task that she was given again is too strange, she clenches her fist and screams in shame. She understands that there is definitely something wrong with this NPC, and his quests are too strange. Nevertheless, this girl continues to believe that if she continues to complete his quests, then success will undoubtedly await her, because for the first time she received a huge amount of experience for completing his quest. Despite the most ridiculous request, the girl took off her shoes and began to take off her sock in order to complete the quest that our main character gave her, so that she would learn to obey. After a couple of moments, we began to observe how this girl, holding her sock in her hand, stood on one leg. She needed to hold on like that for 1 minute. Everyone around looked at this girl in surprise. Even our main character, despite the fact that he just stood and watched, felt very awkward. He did not have any ulterior thoughts in order to give this quest. Everything was for experimental purposes. The course of events accelerates, and we watch as the girl stood for a whole minute and put her sock back on. She stood very awkwardly and tried to forget what happened just recently. A couple of moments later, the girl once again approached our main character and, making a kawaii appearance, asked him if she could help him with anything else, having received another quest. Meanwhile, our main character has not yet recovered from the feeling of Spanish shame. Covering his eyes with his palm and sighing, the guy asked himself who pulled his tongue to test this girl. A couple of moments later, we watch as our main character once again gave this girl a strange task, which consisted in the fact that she needed to count the chickens. The reward, as always, was 1 coin. This most difficult task was then followed by another equally difficult task, which was to say hello to the guard. For this quest, the girl again received 1 coin. The tasks continued to get stranger and stranger. This time she needed to buy red paper from a merchant and add as many as 7,700 hearts and get 1 whole coin for it. The 4th task from our main character was for the girl to dance and sing for an audience of more than 5 people dressed as Hatsune Miku, for which she received 1 coin and the condemnation of her guildmates. Meanwhile, this cold moon cat girl was already starting to go crazy from these insanely strange tasks from our main character. She stood in the Hatsune Miku costume and was indignant. All this time, our main character was secretly watching this girl complete her tasks. He understood that apparently he really could completely control this disaster. Let's do the quests. Meanwhile, the imaginary thought about the fact that before people had no idea about any closed beta testing, and the people who participated in it seemed to have evaporated and seemed to not exist. Continuing to try to unravel this dark mystery, our main character also realized that at the end of the game there will be awakened ones and gods. He wonders if he has enough strength to cope with it. After a couple of moments of war, the girl in the costume of Hatsune Miku, who had already been tortured by our main character with his stupid quests, finally received a notification that now the imaginary's favor has increased and they are friends. When this girl read this notice, she was filled with joy. Her favor grew, and she will now finally be able to receive normal tasks without any nonsense for 1 coin. Immediately after receiving this notification, the girl ran off the stage and headed towards our main character through the crowds of newfound enthusiastic fans. She called the guy her boss. Approaching our main character, she heard that a guy this evening outside the northern city would be able to give her a task that she might not be able to handle, so he advised her to take someone with her. But the girl didn't think for a second, because she was very glad that the series of meaningless tasks would finally end. She answered the guy that she would certainly bring someone to get the task. After a couple of moments, the Sinvoa girl got up on stage and asked everyone who was level 5 and above to gather in the northern part of the city tonight. The crowd was all for it. Meanwhile, our main character was leaving this place against the backdrop of an enthusiastic crowd. Now he is only level 1. Before that location appears, he must level up as quickly as possible. After a couple of moments, the course of events is interrupted, and we continue when the course of events moves to the very southern part of the city, in the area of newcomers where the meeting with the cat girl was scheduled. Going a little lower, we observe a crowd of players who are trying to recruit a squad offering various goodies, for example, a gift in the form of a level 5 bib and so on. Looking at this lively crowd of players who are trying so hard to get a party, our main character understands that during beta testing it was much less lively. After a couple of moments, a suspicious guy approaches our main character and offers our main character to quickly level up because he already has the 3rd level and is ready to help. This game is unfriendly for beginners. It's too difficult to level up, and the monsters are too strong. If you don't reach level 3 as soon as possible, you'll hardly be a noob. Meanwhile, the guy is leaving the eccentric. This charlatan shouts after our main character that he is just a 1st level loser. She asks him if he really thinks that there is at least something for him. Everyone begins to discuss the fact that this guy will be put in his place by the wolves of the 1st level, and in 5 minutes he will already be at the resurrection point. Everyone is ready to bet that the guy will not last long. A couple of moments later, a guy with blonde hair with the nickname Sword Cutting the Sky approaches our main character. He apologizes to our main character and asks if he can help him with something. People are shocked that this blonde of the 5th level is groveling in front of a loser of the 1st level. Everyone laughs at him. Even the sister of this blonde with purple hair asks him what he is doing. But this guy, feeling a little awkward, tells his sister to stop because in front of him there is only an NPC. He has already managed to scan the imaginary, and he knows that he is considered a walking disaster. Meanwhile, the faces of the people who bullied our main character change. They don't understand how such NPCs can exist. They wonder if they will get into trouble. But our main character, like a real gigachad, in response to an offer of help from this blonde, simply turns around and goes on about his business, telling him that he can manage without his help. A couple of moments later, in an instant, in this huge crowd, a notification appeared above everyone's heads that the favor of the NPC under the nickname Imaginary had decreased towards them by 10 points. Everyone was in shock. This crowd, which made fun of our main character, immediately changes in mood. They are shocked by the fact that the guy is really a game character. They not only screwed up the tasks and lost their favor. Meanwhile, our bulk hero continued with a confident step to start his wild farming in the open world in order to raise his level as quickly as possible on his own. But this crowd of dissatisfied players was not going to retreat Chen Mo. They pointed a finger at him and were going to run after him before he left. They thought that they still had a chance to get the quest. Then we watched as our main character continued to confidently move towards the farm at a slow pace, and meanwhile a huge crowd of players who were eager to receive the quest was running behind him. But in an instant, our main character decided to make a dash when he reached the saber-toothed rabbits of the 1st level, which had the skill of exploding bats and hitting batons, which have great damage. After a couple of moments, our main character quickened his pace even faster and reached the 4th level demonic wolves, a regular rank, but the note said a warning that they attack in a pack. But despite the huge number of 4th level wolves, our 1st level protagonist only stopped to take his sword out of its sheath and take the fight. After a moment, our main character began to use the level 1 Soul Pierce skill. This skill inflicts significant damage along with several random effects and spends 1 point of spiritual power. But the speed of this blow was a real phenomenon, because our main character, at the moment of using the skill, overcame all the laws of physics and exceeded the limit of the speed of light, causing damage to the wolf. After the skill was completed, we watched as this wolf's hit points decreased by 850 points, which was enough to completely kill him with 1 blow. The crowd that had been watching and running after our main character all this time could not believe that a 1st level loser killed a 4th level demonic wolf with 1 blow, because this is impossible. While our main character continued to advance towards this huge pack of wolves with a sword at the ready, the same legendary armor of an unlimited level appeared on him, which reduces the damage done by 10 times. A couple of moments later, we saw how many wolves from one pack attacked our main character at the same time. But the guy didn't even flinch from his place. and stood calmly waiting for the gift to be given to him. As soon as these wolves began to inflict numerous and very frequent blows to our main character, the damage inflicted on our main character appeared in front of us. Each attack took 1 life. After the imaginary was convinced that his new legendary equipment and his top skill worked just fine, he was about to strike back at this gang of shameful wolves. The blows of our main character were not long in coming, because immediately after he got into a fighting stance, the guy launched many attacks, each of which killed 1 wolf. After the guy finished his series of strikes, he put his sword back in its sheath against the backdrop of a crowd of corpses. In one battle with an entire army of wolves, he received 60,000 experience points. At that moment, our main character was on a live broadcast, and everyone who watched this broadcast saw how he masterfully dealt with an army of wolves. They were all wondering where to get such a suit. They were also wondering if they could have a playable character on their team. Meanwhile, our main character took the opportunity to look into the camera and wink for his newfound fan base. A couple of moments later, a notification appeared above the head of our protagonist, which promised him that right now he had entered a location called the Depths of the Wolf Valleys. Looking at his character window, the guy realized that the level had increased much faster than he expected. Meanwhile, he also arrived at the place where he agreed to meet with that girl. But after a couple of moments, something unexpected happened. Our main character, with a full level of seriousness, looked at something that suddenly appeared in front of him. The crowd behind saw it in shock. Before us is a storm demonic wolf guardian, already of the 7th level of ordinary rank. The note says that he is much more fierce and bloodthirsty than an ordinary storm wolf. When encountered, it is recommended to escape. After reading the description of this suddenly appearing wolf guard, the entire crowd behind Shenmue began to flee. Only our main character continued to stand like a Sigma in front of the guard's face. Looking back and seeing how the crowd was chasing him to get the quest, he began to run away to save his life. The guy smiled and called them pathetic cowards and losers. After a couple of moments, the guy immediately took out his sword from his sheath in order to teach this storm wolf guard a lesson that he will remember for a very long time. Immediately after this, the guy made a quick dash, closing the distance to the wolf and striking him with a powerful blow with his sword, which was enough to take the life of a powerful enemy. After the guy easily dealt with this guardian wolf, the crowd that had just recently run away began to rejoice at our main character and shout to him that he was a cool Giga Chad. But after a couple of moments, this enthusiastic crowd was approached by 3 people who told this crowd of losers to immediately disperse and give them way. Meanwhile, our main character, who just a moment ago was the center of attention, looked back and saw the very catgirl head of the guild with whom he had recently made an appointment here. Meanwhile, the crowd began to sort things out among themselves, but at this time the girl with short white hair continued to silently walk towards our main character. The crowd realized that this was the Cold Moon Guild. A couple of moments later, our protagonist's assistant approached him through the crowd and, addressing him as a boss, told him that she had brought people as he asked, thereby fulfilling the assignment. After our main character saw this crowd, he told them to just wait, because soon a secret location would open here to which they would all go together, so he called them. Then our main character, without saying anything, began to leave somewhere. A group of people who were brought by the head of the Cold Moon Guild silently watched what the imaginary was doing. Meanwhile, our main character reached where he was going, stopped and looked somewhere up. It's unlikely that he just looked at the sky. Probably something focused his attention. Looking up together with our main character, we see a whole bunch of demonic wolves. Apparently the guy dealt with only a small part of the wolves in this seemingly initial location. Our main character paid special attention to the wolf who stood in front of everyone, and also looked at our main character. Apparently the imaginary was looking for him during the trip here. Having scanned this wolf, we understand that this is a white wolf king of the 10th level who has as many as 14,000 health points. He has many skills, and he controls all the packs of wolves in the area. After a couple of moments, this white wolf king pointed his muzzle upward and began to howl, thereby giving the command to the demonic wolves to attack our main character together and his group. Despite the huge crowd of 4th level demonic wolves that were ready to literally trample our main character, he stood as if nothing had happened and waited until they ran up. A couple of moments later, we observed the same crowd that ran after the imaginary from the very exit from the city. They were shocked by the number of wolves. They shouted to the guy to leave here, otherwise he would be torn to pieces. Meanwhile, our main character, in response to the supposed threat that was approaching him, made a jump in the direction of a pack of wolves and in flight began to put on his top-end S-rank armor. After the imaginary gained the required height, he made a powerful sweeping blow that hit a simply huge radius, thereby causing damage to a huge number of wolves at once. A couple of moments later, we watched as our main character, in flight, with the help of just one blow, dealt 850 damage, which is enough to kill a wolf at once to dozens of wolves below him. When our main character landed after delivering this blow, these demonic wolves were already dead and treasures were lying around them, and experience along with things began to be attracted to the guy. But this time the number of wolves was much greater than last time, because behind our main character another similar crowd was approaching and was already attacking him in the back. But these numerous quick attacks from behind on our protagonist still only dealt him 1 hit point thanks to his legendary armor, his health slowly decreasing. After the cowardly crowd of players saw the life bar of our main character, which was very slowly decreasing despite the huge number of hits, they could not believe their eyes. Meanwhile, Chenmo completely stopped paying attention to the ordinary loser wolves that deal him 1 damage. Instead, he motioned to the White Wolf King. The White Wolf King, unlike these losers of his henchmen from the pack, had a higher level and was a real leader who looked at the guy with the gaze of a predator. He was ready to tear him to pieces. After a couple of moments, this confident, unusual monster pounced on our protagonist and opened its mouth wide to attack our protagonist. This huge White Wolf King, despite his impressive size, was several dozen times faster than his henchmen, even despite the large difference in size. In response to the very rapidly approaching White Wolf King, our main character only took a fighting stance in order to meet his opponent with a direct blow. There were literally a couple of seconds left before the collision of these two. Our main character, like this White Wolf King, were equally confident in their abilities. In a couple of seconds, it will be clear who is stronger. However, the crowd of ordinary players who had been spectators all this time had already begun to avert their eyes so as not to see our main character being torn to pieces by this huge wolf. But despite the predictions and the crowd's uncertainty about our main character, the guy turned out to be much faster than this monster, because he was the first to close the distance and, dodging the attack, struck. When our main character lands on the ground after a magnificent blow to this huge white wolf, we realize that they still exchanged blows, but the guy will again take 1 damage. The same cannot be said about the White Wolf King, who, having landed opposite our main character after being hit by Chen Mo, lost as many as 2,145 health points. The crowd watching the battle, which a moment ago did not believe in our main character, once again began to rejoice when they were convinced that the guy was truly the all-powerful Sigma. But Chenmo was not going to stop with 1 blow, because it was not enough. The guy jumped out of his place to reduce the distance and continue the fight. Immediately after the guy had sufficiently shortened the distance, he struck a second blow to this wolf boss, again inflicting 2,145 health points on this shameful mongrel. The series of blows of our main character did not intend to end. The blow continued after blow, and the damage inflicted by our main hero on Russia from blow to blow, the wolf had no chance. After the imaginary dealt a couple more powerful blows to this white wolf, who was not able to fight on equal terms with this guy, he fell and died because he had no health left. Due to the fact that the boss of the location was killed, everyone received a notification from the system saying that a boss of the 10th level of the Lord rank was killed in the city of Qingfeng, so the secret location was open. The course of events is interrupted, and we move to the city of Qingfeng, in which loudspeakers notify all residents about this news. Everyone cannot believe their ears, because now the cool level is 5. Meanwhile, only our protagonist's henchman from the Cold Moons Guild remains as calm as possible, taking a pose making a reference to Evangelion or Sasuke's pose from the first seasons of Naruto. Having opened the forum of this game, we observe that no one believes that the boss of the Lord rank was killed. Everyone is surprised because NPC should not be capable of this. Many suspect him of cheating. The girl is worried because now, because of the forum, everyone will know that they are involved in this murder of the boss. This girl's guildmate tells her that this is good, because now their guild will rise in the rankings. Meanwhile, the girl received a message from some girl who, calling her Little Lily, asked her how to get to a secret location that had recently opened after killing the boss. The girl with round glasses asked her friend if that bitch Jiang Yuyang wrote to her. The cat girl replied that yes, and not only she, other guild masters also wrote to her with the same question. The girl with round glasses began to think about what they should do in such a situation. The cat girl of the guild's eyes said that in this case, they could only act based on the situation. Suddenly a thought comes into the head of this girl with short white hair. She understands that she still needs to learn something by contacting other guild masters, and this is important. A couple of moments after this, a Zoom conference opens in front of us in which all the current masters of the guild participate. In front of us, from top to bottom, are Huang Chao, Tian Yu, Jue Yin, and Zhang Yuyang. After a couple of moments of fighting, the last one on the list of guild masters reports that since they have all already gathered, It's time for them to get down to business, because group calls are a very expensive pleasure. In response to this comment, our protagonist's assistant and the master of the Cold Moons Guild says that this is all funny, because they are probably only interested in money in life. One of the guild masters, who looks like a typical Discord server moderator, says that he doesn't care about money. He asks the ladies how they can't understand this. Meanwhile, the handsome guild master with a glass of wine in his hand says that it's enough to swear in a group call, because they all gathered to discuss the recent incident with the NPC. The girl still decides to tell her that after she completed a series of tasks from this NPC, he told her to wait, and soon a hidden secret location to which they were heading would appear. Hearing this girl's explanation, the 4 guild masters were shocked. They asked the girl if everything with this NPC really turned out just like that. Many of their eyes were bulging. The cat girl with short hair continues that everything was just as she said, and if they suddenly don't believe her in the notification that everyone received, then they can go and kill this boss themselves. In response to this girl's proposal to go and kill the boss of the Lord level, there was dead silence. Probably no one except our main character could so easily deal with such a powerful boss. After a couple of moments, this girl with white hair said that if all the questions that interested them were finished, then she was already going to disconnect from this useless conversation on Zoom. Immediately after this proposal, all the guild masters really began to tune out this conversation. The girl sighed because the conversation was indeed very dreary and stuffy. However, everything stuffy at this moment did not end, because a couple of moments later, this girl received a call. The caller was Jiang Yuyang, one of the guild masters. The girl looked in surprise. Picking up the phone and seeing this white-haired bitch in front of her, she asked her to be faster because she explained everything. She was asked not to rush. She asked the cat girl to introduce her to the NPC under any conditions. Hearing that this girl was ready to fulfill all conditions in order to meet an NPC, this girl demanded that she call her big sister and begged her for this on her knees. But this narcissistic bitch was not ready to humiliate herself so much just to get to know our main character. Instead, she sent a white deer and disconnected from the call. A couple of moments after this misunderstanding, this girl received a notification from our protagonist Chen Mo, asked her to bring someone to him without arousing suspicion. Immediately after this girl read the request of our main character, she called her faithful companions with her and headed forward to unknown places and adventures. The course of events is interrupted, and we are transported to a dangerous zone called the outskirts of the Valley of the Underworld. A level 10 dungeon, it can be divided into 3 zones: the surrounding area, the ring, and the cradle.
Our main character, entering this dungeon as a group, making his way through the inner ring, led his small team to the cradle, while the rest of the guild members were ordered to hold the defense in the surrounding area.
When our main character and his group encountered some monsters along the way in this dangerous dungeon, he easily dealt with them, killing them with one blow without much effort. Meanwhile, our main character's team, watching him, never cease to admire him because he is too good and deals with high-level monsters for him without even trying. Our main character easily killed lizards of the 8th level of regular rank, which were special monsters that lived only here. Although they were not able to withstand a couple of blows from the guy, they were extremely strong. The course of events is interrupted and we move when this group of waifus, led by our main character, reach the inner ring of the Valley of the Underworld. A system notification notifies them about this. Well, our main character is not at all embarrassed by this, and he continues to move further and further through this secret special location that has not yet been revealed to anyone except him. Continuing to move through this dangerous zone, the guy warns his waifu squad so that they don't accidentally step into the lava lake, because they won't last even a second in it with their current levels. After a couple of moments, the white-haired cat girl asks our main character why he doesn't have the space to jump over these lakes and go straight, saving a lot of time. Instead of answering this question, our main character decided to show these waifus in practice why their logical plan is fundamentally wrong, because he is old in this game. That is why our main character bent down to take the nearest stone near him and try to throw it into this lake of boiling lava. Everyone watched with interest what would happen. After this pebble came into contact with this lava lake, it immediately reacted with a powerful flow of lava that wiped this pebble off the face of the earth without leaving even ashes of it. After this team of waifus saw this, the 3 of them instantly had their jaws dropped because they realized that if they tried to jump over this lake, they would face the same fate as the stone. Shaking his hands from the stone, the guy said that of course such traps are not in every lake they see, but unless necessary, it is better not to try to jump over them, because you may not be lucky. Over hundreds of years in closed beta testing, Chenmo has studied all kinds of locations. He managed to go along all the routes, which is why he knows the current one like the back of his hand. He is completely confident in it. The course of events is interrupted, and we continue when our squad finally reaches this huge tree with red foliage, which they had been trying to get to all this time. It was truly gigantic. Our main character stopped in front of this tree and silently looked at it, thinking that he had actually died here more than once, but he had to find a safe path through trial and error. As this group continued to move above the branches of this tree, we observed level 12 lava moths that had the skills of Scorching Storm. The notes said that they should not be neglected. After a couple of moments, the waifu squad still noticed something was wrong when they continued to walk under the branches of this huge tree. They realized that right now there were some creepy insects above us. After the white-haired waifu took a closer look and raised her head up, seeing these terribly frightening and numerous moths, she was frightened and closed her mouth so as not to scream. Meanwhile, these 12-level moths were not going to stand AFK. Instead, they began to actively descend from the branches of the tree in order to teach this squad a lesson. But despite the rather unexpected attack of these lava moths, our main character managed to suddenly appear in front of his subordinate in order to strike upward to save her from the blows. Meanwhile, our main character managed to deal with this huge number of moths with one blow, and in response to the numerous attacks of this swarm of monsters, he received only 1 damage. With such a rude move and saving his group, our main character immediately again received a ton of admiring glances from his team of waifus. They could not believe their eyes once again. Looking at her coolest Giga Chad boss, this white-haired waifu squeezing her fist, realized that she couldn't miss him at any cost, because he's the real Superman of this game. After a couple of moments, the course of events is interrupted and continues when our squad reaches a new dangerous zone again. This time, they are warned that they have entered the last zone of the cradle of the Valley of the Underworld. At the end of this secret dungeon, the leader of the Blood Wolves of the sacred Mount Meru was waiting for them. He was already level 15. His rank was again a lord, and his health was as much as 21,000. Meanwhile, our main character continues to confidently move towards the boss, telling his group to stand aside and leave it to him. The girl objected, saying that they could distract him with themselves. But the guy answered this, albeit to the caring team from the waifu, that despite their desire to help, they would only get in the way of his feat in attempts to provide him with some kind of help. Meanwhile, our main character continues to confidently move towards this boss in order to engage in battle. A notification warns him that with his presence he has disturbed the leader's sleep. A couple of moments later, we watch as this huge boss of the Lord level woke up from his sleep and stood in front of our main character, who in comparison was little more than a small dog. Despite the fact that in front of our main character there was a cool high-level boss, he only waved his hand at him with a smile, telling the leader of the Blood Wolves that they had not seen each other for a very long time, and he missed him. Even this powerful leader who stood in front of our main character did not understand what this strange eccentric meant, whom he was going to tear to shreds. A couple of moments later, this huge leader of the Bloody Wolves attacked our main character with his mouth wide open. He shouted to the little people that a step into the Valley of the Underworld is a step towards death. But despite the direct threat from the powerful boss who was heading towards our main character to tear him apart, he was not worried at all. On the contrary, he thought that nothing had changed. But after a couple of moments, our main character still decided to take a fighting stance in order to be ready to start delivering his powerful blows to the next Lord-level boss. Immediately after this, our main character decided that he would not wait for this boss to attack. Instead, he shortened the distance to this boss and struck him with a sweeping blow with his cool sword. This blow caused quite significant damage to the boss. The Lord of the Blood Wolves was shocked that some little man managed to inflict as much as 2,510 points of damage on him with the first attack. But this Lord rank boss, unlike the previous one, was not going to just stand there and continue to earn extra money with a punching bag, which is why he used his skill called Earth Rumble. But the Lord rank wolf was not going to limit himself to just one skill. Instead, he continued to attack while his first skill was active in order to increase the likelihood of hitting our main character. Our main character remained amazingly calm while standing in front of a huge boss with powerful abilities. Because he had already fought with him more than once during closed beta testing, he knows that he will become smaller. After a couple of moments, our main character's prediction came true as quickly as possible. As expected, the boss put up a lava barrier and activated the skill. He decreased in size and rushed to attack as always. The predictions of our main character continued to come true one after another, because this boss actually attacked our main character a couple of moments later, despite the fact that he had greatly decreased in size. But the guy already knew by heart every attack of this boss and was ready to easily dodge each one, which is why Chen Mo easily dodged the next attack. A couple of moments later, the guy once again soared into the air thanks to a powerful jump, after which, during the landing, he dealt a crushing blow that caused 2,500 damage. Meanwhile, our protagonist's waifu team, watching the battle, tried to understand whether their eyes were deceiving them, because they would never achieve such technology, maneuvers, and the ability to predict movements. Meanwhile, being on the battlefield with a powerful boss, our main character continued to deal crushing blow after crushing blow, causing 2,000 damage to this loser with each blow. Due to the fact that this powerful boss was not able to hit Chen Mo even once, a very predictable end awaited him. He was defeated. He never managed to land a single blow on the guy. Meanwhile, our main character, having finished the battle, began to put his sword back into its sheath and approach the boss's body, which was beginning to decompose into system particles. After the boss finally fell apart into loot, our main character realized that he saw what he was looking for, because after this boss there was a whole set of high-quality equipment, armor, and weapons. Having scanned one of the weapons, we saw in front of us a level 10 Platinum class underworld weapon. If you take this weapon, the player will have the opportunity to participate in the tests. Our main character, approaching the loot without hesitation, took this weapon and put it on his hand. He understood that the buffs from this weapon were not bad, but its weaknesses were no less bad. Even in the closed beta, the item was considered so-so. But after a couple of moments, our military protagonist once again looked at the things that remained after the death of the boss he had defeated. His attention was focused on a strange small ball of fire. The guy, without hesitation, took it in his hands and was very surprised. Probably judging by his facial expression, this object was familiar to him, and he was probably somehow cool. Before us is a mysterious artifact of the underworld, a rarity common. The conditions are to consume the player's spiritual energy. In return for this, the player, using the artifact, will receive buffs depending on his profession. Chen Mo, looking at his newly acquired beauty, could not get enough of it. It seems that since the beginning of open beta testing, new features have appeared for players with a mythical profession. Having taken this pearl, our main character understood that such a cool item fell from some weak boss of level 15. He was even scared to imagine what could fall from a boss of level 100 and above. A couple of moments after the team from our main character's waifu was convinced that the battle was over, they ran up to the guy and asked their boss if something cool had dropped. Meanwhile, our main character began his teleportation. He told his squad that he would answer their question at the next meeting, but for now they need to go back the same way before the monster returns. The white-haired waifu was shocked that our main character simply used the teleport and disappeared. She wanted to catch up with him in order to stop him, but it was already too late. The girl became very angry after this with this bastard, because he was almost with them. But he disappeared with lightning speed. The girl continued to be filled with anger that the guy left them alone. Meanwhile, the girl in round glasses told the lady that they need to hurry up, because if the monsters update, they will have problems. The girl replied that she is coming because she does not want to face these monsters. The course of events is interrupted and continues when we move to the vicinity of the wasteland, which means that our main character's squad has already safely escaped from the secret location. After a detachment of 3 waifu from the Cold Moons Guild left the secret location, one of the guild members who was standing guard ran up to them and reported that the heads of the guilds had already arrived here. When the girl heard about this news, she was very surprised that the heads of the great 4 guilds came here so quickly, because they appeared here using teleportation techniques. The guy continued to pester his mistress, saying that it is unknown how, but they found out about the teleportation technique. All that is known is that they spent fabulous sums for this. Immediately after this, everything falls into place. The girl understands that they did not sit idly by while the Cold Moon Guild grew so much, so they, like them, are ready for a fierce battle for the resources of this location. The girl with round glasses added that they shouldn't worry, because their headquarters is here after all. And besides, now they are superior in numbers and strength, and since the game was launched recently, everyone is on an equal footing. A couple of moments after this, the waifu with white hair also began to use the teleportation technique in order to use the teleport to leave this area that was unnecessary for them now. Before she disappeared, the girl told the girl with round glasses named Mo to take the others and go explore the secret location, and she will go to meet these bastards. Meanwhile, the course of events is interrupted, and we are transported to the headquarters of 6 dark dragons, or to be more precise, we move straight to the office of the deputy director. A couple of moments later, we watch as our main character, after killing 2 bosses of the Lord level, enters this office of the deputy director with a very important look. Immediately after this, we see in front of us the little moon already familiar to us, who, having seen him, realized that except for him, no one else was able to enter her office so unceremoniously. Meanwhile, the girl, putting the jewelry in her mouth and starting to collect her hair, asks our main character so that next time he remembers to knock on the door before entering. Our main character continues to move inside this office, after which he sits down opposite this girl. He immediately tells the girl that he is here on business because he needs her help. Judging by the reaction of this girl, she is not at all opposed to listening to our main character, because upon hearing about the request for help, he asks what kind of business this is and what type of help he needs. Chenmo continues saying that he would like to receive several assignments. As a reward, he takes genetic medicines, energy crystals, magic scrolls, anything will do. However, this little moon, smiling, got up from his office chair and walking away somewhere, tells our main character that now she has nothing to entrust him with. The guy, throwing up his hands, continues to ask. After a couple of moments, this girl approaches the archives and begins to lay them out. The guy continues saying that the 6 dark dragons probably have a couple of cases lying around in the archives, and he is ready to take on any. Next, our main character approaches this girl with folded arms and offers her his help in sorting out the archive and finding something for him that he can carry out as an assignment. The girl, in response to this seemingly ordinary proposal, continues to look for something, begins to get a little embarrassed. She asks our main character to think about whether there is an assignment for him in the archive. After a couple of moments, we watch as our main character, filled with testosterone, approaches this girl from behind and reaches out with his hand to one of the archives in order to pick it up. Next, our main character hands this girl the archive that he took and tells her that if she thinks about the assignment that she can entrust to him, he will not interfere with her. Meanwhile, our main character approaches the window and, leaning on it, begins to think about how to control this crowd of players known as the 4 disasters. We need to figure out how to win their hearts. And now the hearts of the people Chenmo is talking about yearn only for artifacts and tips on where to find these very artifacts. At this time, we are watching the top players and NPCs. With only this information, all he needs to do is place the necessary quests and crowds of players will rush to do it, so he plans to establish control over all the players through quests. At this rather deep thought, the course of events is interrupted and continues when we move to the headquarters of the Cold Moon Guild. Members of our main character's squad are members of this guild. A couple of moments later, we see how the guild mistress, already familiar to us, sits surrounded by other guild masters. They are going to immediately get down to business. She spared no effort in bringing her people to the city. But the guild mistress, already familiar to us, is not going to be nice to these guild masters. Instead, she asks them directly so that they immediately answer what they are up to. Meanwhile, the owner of the guild, who constantly wears a business suit, drinks water and complains that the mug in his mug is not even tea, but some kind of simple, warm water. He would really like there to be wine in it. Before us is the most important. The 4 great guilds jointly decide to proclaim to the entire game world that the Cold Moon Guild has been promoted to the rank of the 5th largest guild, and its head Kelly becomes the 5th in influence. Meanwhile, Kelly pretends that she is not shocked by what she heard. Instead, she maintains her cool, but in her heart she is very surprised. She wonders if she could really climb so high, but the girl's composure and cool head immediately tells her to ask these guild heads the most important thing: under what conditions her guild and her own influence will be so greatly increased. The chief of the guild masters replies that she will receive everything promised in exchange for all the information about that inimitable NPC and about the mysterious kingdom that was discovered quite recently. The girl, in response to this, repeats herself by saying that she has already told everything she knew during the Zoom conference, so she has nothing more to add to these losers opposite her. The main one continues to think that he is the main character. He asks her if she really thinks that since they came here, someone really believes in her fairy tales that she told at the conference. Another guild mistress, known for her status as a bitch, continues to tell little Lee that now or never they expect information from her. For the Cold Moon Guild, this is truly a unique chance. The girl with the nickname First Snow continues to wait for an answer. She continues to add fuel to the fire by asking whether she has really finally decided that she will finally give in to her guild. They continue to convince this girl to tell her everything she knows about our main character, and the guild master, in a very ridiculous costume, also tried especially hard to lure out information. After a couple of moments, this girl interrupts these persuasion from the guild masters and, smiling, tells them that they succeeded and she will really make them a promise right now. After the guild heads heard this from the girl's lips, 3 of the 4 guild masters had a smile on their faces. They were sure that right now she would hear the information that they so badly craved. However, the girl hastened to upset them because they will not receive such precious information for almost nothing. which is why Kelly continued saying that in this case she has 3 simple conditions. The first condition was that the secret kingdom enter the zone of influence of the city of Qingfeng, and 4 great guilds receive the right to explore its territory, but half of the resources go to its guild. The second condition was that at the end of the research, everyone who associates themselves with the 4 great guilds must leave the Qingfeng territory. This is a mandatory condition for visiting. And the third and final condition was that the application for recognition of her guild as the 5th largest and most influential should be in the form fixed in the article for at least 1 week. After that, surprised by the audacity of this girl, the 4 heads of the guilds heard all 3 conditions that this girl set for these losers. The most important of them placed his warm water on the table. After the mug was on the table, this main guy with black hair for a long time, without hesitation, accepted all the conditions that this girl set, saying that they had agreed right now. But the most important of the guild masters added that he made a decision without subjecting it to discussion. But since he does not hear and will not hear objections, then their deal will come into force as quickly as possible. A couple of moments after this, the course of events is interrupted, and we are transported to our main character, Chen Mo. At this moment, they say that he will be entrusted with 1 mission, but there is 1 condition. The little moon, continuing to delve into the archives, smiles at our main character standing at the window and says that her condition is that he join the 6 dark dragons. After our main character heard this proposal, he received a notification that a plot thread called "The Time to Choose a Side" was starting right now. He was surprised. Looking at Chen Mo, the girl understood that despite the fact that the guy does not look particularly strong, he keeps many secrets, so if he takes their side, who knows what secrets will become available to them. After a couple of moments, our main character answered without hesitation for a long time that he takes the side of the Tianwu Empire. The current map of the worlds includes 7 territories. These 7 empires, although they maintain formal neutrality, according to the plot of the open beta, they continue to tirelessly quarrel with each other, both openly and secretly from prying eyes. The rules were observed before, or to be more precise, with the fall of the Bloody Emperor. 7 states lost a common enemy, and it became clear to everyone that this fragile peace could not be preserved for long. Meanwhile, the little moon hands our main character a folder. She says that all the unfulfilled or unsolved cases of their organization are collected there. The guy is given a free choice among them. After a couple of moments, the guy picks up this huge book with old pages and begins to leaf through it furiously, reading each page in order to choose a suitable quest for himself. After a few dozen pages of leafing through countries, our main character stops when he sees the archive folder. He understands that he just got what he was leafing through and pulls it out. Immediately after the guy manages to take what he was looking for, he holds out this archive in front of the girl and says that he will take it, and this will be his order in question. After the little moon gives approval to our main character to begin an assignment based on this archive, Chen Mo begins the launch of a quest called In the Footsteps of Ancient Times. After a couple of moments, more detailed information about this quest is revealed to us. This is a rank S mission. The purpose of the mission, in short, is to investigate the legend of an ancient bloody demon. Little Moon continues to say that just tomorrow a group of their people is moving towards the Lindong Empire. To help their squad clear out the remnants of the Bloody Emperor's troops, he can go with them.
Hearing this, our main character is very surprised, because a couple of moments after hearing the proposal of the little moon, he starts another quest called No Stone Left Unturned.
Unlike the previous quest of rank S, this quest of rank B, the war against the Bloody Emperor is over. But in 7 empires, there are still die-hard followers of the tyrant. The goal of the mission is destruction. For completing the second quest, our main character will receive 10,000 experience points and 20,000 imperial currency. The guy is very surprised that by completing these 2 quests, he will kill 2 birds with 1 stone. A couple of moments later, Little Moon receives some kind of call, but instead of answering, she takes a closer look at it and calls some dude named Chu Yu. She asks him to come here. Immediately after this, a few seconds later, we see in front of us the spitting image of a soldier from the TV series The Boys, who asks the Little Moon, calling her boss, "What happened and what's the matter?" She informs the soldier that our main character is his new colleague from now on, so she entrusts him with his placement in the headquarters. He will also join tomorrow's mission. He is a temporary member of their team. After this very efficient warrior of the small moon listens to the order of his boss, he salutes her, and without asking a single unnecessary or even relevant question, says that he will do everything. Immediately after this, the course of events is interrupted, and we say goodbye to some headquarters on which a huge unit is drawn. We are in the headquarters in which the 3rd Special Squad is located. Standing in front of our main character, this man introduces himself and calls his title. The guy scanning it understands that in front of him is a man of level 15 Superman. He has many skills, and his overall rank is D+. Our main character has no objections to him, so they smoothly get acquainted, securing it with a handshake. This man is an ordinary soldier who is close in strength to bosses of the rank of Lord. Next, this powerful NPC tells our main character that he can look around a little at their headquarters. He has already notified the team that he has arrived. They all wanted to meet him tomorrow. The guy briefly answers that he agrees to meet everyone on tomorrow's mission and begins to leave somewhere in order to listen to the advice of this soldier to inspect this headquarters. Despite the fact that this guy's new colleague in the form of our main character gave him full opportunity to watch whatever he wanted, he continued to watch him and monitor his actions. A couple of moments later, Chen Mo, who was curiously solving the bookshelf, saw something that interested him and was very surprised. Apparently, he did not expect to see it in such a place. This super soldier, immediately surprised, approached our main character, asking him if he was also interested in the ancient language. The guy replied that this was indeed the case and asked if he could watch it. The man replies with a smile on his face that he can calmly take it a little later and study it to his heart's content. Because in their time, very few people are really honestly interested in the ancient language. A couple of moments later, the conversation about the ancient language of these two is brazenly interrupted by some person who comes to them and asks permission to report some information. The superhuman man gives his permission for those who interrupted them to report what they wanted. Meanwhile, 3 members of the special squad began to walk further and further into their room. Next, this superhuman man began to introduce to our main character the members of his new team. In front of us is a guy named Wang Li. Without further ado, his distinguishing feature is that he is a cyborg. Next, we watch the brothers Zhang Da and Zhang Er. They are 2 martial arts masters, and between them, their small 3rd special squad ends, although there are only a few members, but they are daring guys. After a couple of moments, the super soldier asks the cyborg Wang Li to take our protagonist to his room in their dorm. He tells where his room is and asks him to also introduce the guy to safety precautions. After a couple of moments, our main character says goodbye to the rest of the team until tomorrow's operation and continues to walk along the long corridor with the cyborg so that he can show him his personal room. Next, one of the brothers asks the commander where this guy came from. The commander replies that he was appointed from above. He also has no idea who he is. But in any case, this does not concern them. Meanwhile, the course of events accelerates and we continue when it is already deep night and the time is approaching to complete and consolidate our day with a good restorative sleep. At this moment, our main character continues to be told that the boss has already decided everything and there is nothing to be done, so he will carefully monitor that everything went smoothly. After a couple of moments, the course of events is interrupted again, and this time we move to the dormitory that is allocated to the special squad, or, more simply, to our main character. Our main character is informed that the room opposite him is his personal room, and the commander of the special squad lives in the next one. If he has any questions, he can contact him directly. He is a kind person. After a couple of moments, the cyborg comes to his senses and says that it looks like he's wasting his time here in vain, because not everyone can so easily borrow a book from the commander of the special squad himself, a fan of the ancient language. Meanwhile, our main character, holding a book in his hands that he borrowed from a muscular captain, awkwardly scratches his head, saying that most likely he was just lucky that they found a common language. A couple of moments later, we see how our main character enters his room and sits on the bed, opens a book in front of him. A notification asks him if he wants to study the ancient bronze language. The guy briefly answers yes, and the study begins. The ancient language is available for study to players exclusively of the mystical profession. It increases the level of confidence in the player and also awards bonus points. But if you go into details, it turns out that this language is not the most ancient, and to be honest, it is demonic, so this greatly changes the situation and position of this language. But our main character can't do anything. Tomorrow he needs to go on an important mission, and he needs to increase his level as soon as possible. The experience that he has already accumulated is just enough. After a couple of moments, our main character is enveloped in effects, as he is congratulated on reaching a new level. His attack, defense, physical damage, and intelligence have increased by 10 points. The guy continues to study his character window. Now 10 points will be added to his fixed characteristics, not counting the 20 points he receives from artifacts.